So guys, welcome back to part number 3 or whatever part series this video is on rebuilding the engine in this Arctic Cat 400. So in this video we got all the parts to rebuild this motor and hopefully, knock on wood, we will get it running and driving in this video. So let's uncover this delicate masterpiece. So here's some crisp fix, out with the old and in with the new. So this crankshaft should just slide all the way through. So what I did was I put the crankshaft in the freezer for 4 hours or so. I didn't heat this up at all, I just brought it inside. And just for fun I took it out and see if it would go in, and it actually slid right on in. So I just blew the bearings out on the transmission. I'm putting the transmission all back together right now. And as you can see when I'm spinning it, you can see all the gears spinning in there. When this slides over, that's in first gear. When this slides over that way, that's second gear. When this goes back to neutral and this slides over, that's third gear. And then when this goes in neutral, fourth gear is when this gear here slides over into there. And then fifth gear is sliding back that way. And all those shifting forks are controlled by the shifting drum with all these passageways. So the transmission's all back together and it's spinning really nice, and it goes through all the gears and everything perfectly fine. It's not that complicated once you look at it, but from first glance it might be, but really it's not. So we are outside now and I cleaned up the crank balancer here. Before you install it, you gotta line up these dots. Bam. Alright, so I would normally say here goes nothing, but it's more like here goes everything. Alright guys, so I got it pretty close. Just took a little bit hitting it with this rubber mallet. But I'm going around now just kind of sticking the bolts in. I'm not going to fully tighten them down because I want to let that RTV sit and cure for a while, and then in about an hour we'll fully torque it down. So that's pretty much the case all back together. Everything seems to be spinning really freely. So when you put this gear on, be sure that little pin is in there. That's very important, otherwise you won't have any oil pressure. And there we have it, a complete oiling system. So the next challenging task we gotta do is put this clutch back together, and we gotta do them both at the exact same time because otherwise they won't go together. So I got the case all cleaned up here. It's looking really nice. Just put a little bit of oil in certain areas. So now with that done, let's move on to the other side. I went through with the wire brush and cleaned up the contacts right here, so it should be good. So I'm gonna reinstall this. So the last thing we gotta do is install the new flywheel because I had to cut the other one off with the angle grinder. Can you imagine that? So to be sure that never happens again and not weld itself back on there, I'm gonna put anti-seize all around it. So now hopefully this will all go back together somewhat smoothly and not be frustrating. Alright guys, so the motor was sitting up here and I picked it up and I brought it down here because once you assemble this whole bottom end, this thing is pretty dang heavy. Alright, so I got my piston here with the rings installed, the oiling rings and the 2 compression rings. EX that obviously faces out. So I finally managed to get that in there, force it in there with the pair of pliers, but the piston is finally installed and we can now install the cylinder. So looks like we're done with this valve cover here, because if you look closely, that is completely galled up and chewed up. Look where the camshaft rides. That's pretty much the bearing surface that it is riding on. I mean, that is in like terrible condition. Look at all those score marks and crap on there. The reason this is so bad is because they've ran this thing low on oil in the past and it got hot on top of that. And I think that's what happened and caused this failure. If I try to reuse this as soon as I put it all back together, and even with oil in it, it's still probably gonna weld itself to this because this is all galled up and it's just gonna like lock it up in seconds. However, the valves on this head, they look like they're in pretty good condition. They just need some cleaning. All right, guys, here, moment of truth. Out with the old terrible head and in with the new / good used head. Look at that. The valve cover. There's no score marks on the cam. There's no score marks in the head. The cam looks a lot better condition. You can see that the colors are a lot brighter in here, and the tappets look good as well. Because if we look in this one, it's all black and disgusting in there because that was burnt oil in there, and these are also burnt. You see them up here. So let's do some more crisp fix and give this a super clean. And after, there's our crisp fix super clean. So guys, I'm gonna be cleaning up the valves and putting them back in the head, and I found out one of the valves that actually came out of this head that I bought is actually ever so slightly bent. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see that valve rock right there. It didn't even look that bent when I was taking it apart, but luckily on the old head, I grabbed this one and I checked it and it was perfectly straight. So all these valves are straight because I was fixing to put that in there, but thank God I caught that. So I found a video on YouTube on how to polish up valves, and this is after I polished it. And before, it looked like this, all carboned up and disgusting. Basically, I just put this in a drill and held a Scotch-Brite pad over it, ran a little bit of water over it, and yeah, it came out not too bad. So what we got here is some valve grinding compound, and I'm just going through and just lightly reseating the valves. So just spending time with the valve spring compressor. I got all the valves put all back in there. It seemed to go together pretty good. The seals were a little bit hard to get in there, but I got that in there. So a real battle is dealing with this timing chain, because if that falls down, then you gotta tear the whole motor back apart again. And the head should just slide right on, just like that. So now let's throw a cam in her. All right guys, so I spent a good while lining up the timing mark right there for top dead center and aligning these right here. That number or letter or whatever you have has to go on the bottom. I figured that putting the chain over here is much easier because if you go over here, it's just gonna bind up against the case. So yeah, I got it going good and it seems to spin freely. I just put RTV down, set this down, and put all the bolts in. That's literally all I did. Still gotta check the valve clearance and all that and wait for the RTV to dry, fully torque it down. So now since we're pretty much done with the top end, let's put the pole starter back on. So now since the pole starter's on there, the manual start, let's put the electric starter on there. So there we have it guys, a fully rebuilt 2005 Arctic Cat 400 Suzuki engine. So the four-wheeler's outside drying after washing off a bit more layers of dirt. So now let's do a brilliant editing magic by cleaning up the garage and getting this motor back in the four-wheeler. Just like that, we got the motor in there, all bolted down, wiring all hooked up. So the oil that's going in this bad boy is 10W40 Honda conventional oil. The reason I'm putting conventional in it is because I just did a complete rebuild, put new rings and everything in the piston. So you want a little bit of metal-to-metal contact with conventional to help seat the rings, because synthetic will be too slippery and the rings will never seat. So we just got some packages in the mail to get this thing running properly. Which is a new intake boot, a new carburetor because I want it to run properly. It came with a fuel filter, got an air filter, and a new battery. So let's get all this stuff installed. Everything's just kind of thrown together as a test of concept, and when I know everything runs and everything's perfect, I'll take it all back down and properly do everything. This is definitely the most nervous part. Starting the engine, just rebuilt for the first time, and letting it run in. Hopefully it all turns out good, but we will see. This is electric choke, by the way. Just hear a teeny tiny bit of valve tap, that's it. We're just gonna let it idle and get up the temperature, just to make sure everything's good. But yeah, everything's good so far. There's no leaks. There's a little bit of valve tap, which is pretty normal-ish. I mean, my brother's Recon has it, so I might go in there and adjust the valves. I really am going to do that once the motor's fully broken in. I got to recheck the oil level, make sure that's good, because the last thing I want to do is run the thing low on oil, just like those rednecks did to completely screw the motor up. All right, so it's cooled back down. I topped the oil off again, so let's crank it up and try to take it down the road. It's actually moving. So I just pulled it around to the front of the garage, and it seems to be doing all right. The clutch is a little tight, so I might need to adjust that, but so far it's not too bad. Clutch is a little tight, I gotta adjust that. So I just got back from my little drive, and I actually drove it probably maybe 2 miles or something like that. Did actually very well. I was going about half to 3/4 throttle, not really babying it the whole time, but just kind of half 3/4 throttle, going up through the gears and the downshifting, kind of going up and down a hill to really seat the rings in. I don't know, it probably has about maybe 15-20 minutes on the oil, which probably do need to dump that because all that sediment and ring stuff is probably in the oil that I need to get out of there. So I'm going to do that. But when I was shifting, it does shift a little bit funny. It's kind of weird. Obviously reverse works fine, and it wouldn't go out of reverse at first, but I had the idle too high, so I set that lower and it finally went back in neutral. I think I really need to do is adjust the clutch right there. Maybe I have it too tight. I did loosen it back just a little bit, and it seemed to do a little bit better, so I might need to work on that a bit. And I did test the low range, and low range freaking crawls, y'all. So let's pop the drain plug, draining the oil out. Even though it looks very clear, there's a lot of metal pieces in there. So it's a good thing we're getting this out of here now. So I just took the bottom plate off, and yeah, there's definitely some pretty good sized metal pieces in there. That's just RTV. Oh yeah, now you can really see it. Huh, look at all that. That looks like a brain in there of all those metal pieces. And here you can look at the screen, and it has definitely caught a lot of crap. So guys, I'm going to cut the video off right here because that's pretty much the motor rebuilt and running, as you can see. So I just put the oil pan back in, the filter back on, pre-filled, and the dipstick kind of halfway in. Did not fill it up with oil yet because I don't have it, so I'm gonna run the capital side hole probably tomorrow and get some more oil and put back in it. Just to run the second phase of the engine break-in.